A very good morning to our MIIM members and friends in Germany, and good afternoon to our participants joining from India. Thank you for joining us today for the informative webinar, A Guide to Your Successful Global Capability Center in India, being organized under the Make in India Mittelstand program in association with our partners Deutsche Bank AG and Rödl & Partner. Rödl & Partner is a knowledge partner for the MIIM program, and I am Maya Yadu, the MIIM project coordinator for Rödl & Partner in Pune, India, and I will take you through the session today. Before we continue the session, let me briefly explain the technical side of our program. The following functions are available to you. In the upper right corner of your screen, you will find the control panel. Here, you can adjust the audio settings and choose, for example, between your headset or the computer audio. Please note that as a participant, you are muted by default. A bit further down the dashboard, you will find the question panel. We will request the attendees to please post their questions in the question section, and we will take these up in the last leg of the webinar during the Q&A. Allow me to very briefly introduce the Make in India Mittelstand program to you. MIIM is an initiative of the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, DPIIT, and the Embassy of India in Berlin. MIIM provides a platform that integrates a wide range of support services for German Mittelstand companies and family-owned enterprises. It is part of the Make in India initiative of the Indian government and is a program designed to facilitate investment, foster innovation, enhance skill development, protect intellectual property, and build best-in-class manufacturing infrastructure. The MIIM program offers all support services like strategy consulting, M&A, operational market entry support, tax and legal support, financial services, project financing, location services, technology collaboration, and facilitation of approvals from central and state government agencies under one single umbrella. Part of the MIIM program is today's informative webinar, in which our speakers from Deutsche Bank AG will inform you about Global Capability Centers, or short, GCCs, and elaborate on the key considerations, benefits, and potential challenges German companies with plans of setting up a GCC should keep in mind. Deutsche Bank AG will also share some insights on their journey in establishing a GCC in India. Our speaker from Rödl & Partner, Vivek Balakrishnan, will then shed light on the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which came into force on 11th of August 2023, and discuss the key compliance requirements under this act. He will also explain the key differences between the Indian law and the EU GDPR. I'm very pleased to welcome our speakers. Kindly allow me to very briefly introduce these speakers to you. I'll start with Mr. Khurshid Dodi. Khurshid Dodi is currently Group Chief Operating Officer, India at Deutsche Bank AG, strategically leading the bank's second largest and top 4 P&L contributor franchise with close to 20,000 staff. He joined the bank in 2000, and his extensive banking experience includes several leadership and management roles at a national, APAC, and global level. Next up is Ms. Pooja Sundar. Pooja Sundar comes with more than 9 years of experience across various roles in corporate banking and transaction banking. She is currently part of the corporate banking global subsidiaries coverage team, responsible for managing a large portfolio of key MNCs and NBFI clients for Western India. Also on board today is Mr. Vivek Balakrishnan. Vivek is a senior associate at the Rödl & Partner office in Bangalore and supports compliance, corporate, contract, commercial, and regulatory practice. Vivek is a legal professional with key areas of interest and specialization in data privacy laws, technology transactions, intellectual property law, employment laws, and commercial transactions. And we will begin today's webinar with Deutsche Bank's keynote, Growing at Scale with Global Capability Centers in India. And without further delay, I would like to hand over the virtual mic to you, Pooja.
Thank you, Maya. And Evie, if you can just help me with the presentation. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining into the webinar. And I think Global Capability Center is definitely a buzzword and a hot topic today. I think, before we get into it, it is important to just recognize how global capability centers have come a long way from just being those sources of cost arbitrage and back office operations to really becoming those global value organizations in themselves. They've transformed and evolved to become, these innovation centers and for breakthrough ideas. They also are able to contribute really deep insight for transformational and scalable growth today for organizations. Just moving on to the next slide, Evie, if you can just help me. Yeah, so global capability centers really today exist in various forms and manners in terms of, centers of excellence, shared service centers, knowledge centers, innovation centers, and have loads of benefits to offer to, our global conglomerate organizations, whether it is focused on core business, leveraging synergies, economies of scale, and really driving that digital transformation and scalable growth. Next slide, please. So yeah, global capability centers have been around for close to 2 decades now, and India, I would say, has kind of got the recipe right. India today has close to 50% share of the global GCC market, which translates into close to 1,600 existing GCCs in the country, with 2,000 more expected to get added in the next 3 to 4 years. In terms of workforce, around 1.7 million of people employed in this sector, and another 2.5 million to get added. So it's definitely a huge market and a huge opportunity for India. And when I say that India has kind of got the recipe right, what we mean is India has the leadership, India has the talent, India has the innovation capability, as well as, most importantly, the maturity of the model. India has proven GCCs in terms of, in an agnostic way, whether it is size, scale, or industry. There are loads of industries today, large MNCs from different industries and of different sizes, who have established shop in India and are, doing a great job as on date in terms of leveraging their overall scalability and establishing a global center. So yeah, and the other thing that has really happened is the model has kind of evolved, especially in the post-pandemic world, which is more like any work, anyone, anywhere kind of an era, where we've been able to in India really validate this model at scale. What is really going to drive the growth for India in this space as compared to some of the global other global locations? I think there are, we, from an India standpoint, we are really in sort of the final leg or the final iteration of the global GCC revolution, and there are these 4 to 5 things which are really going to be the game changers for us in the next coming few years. Number one, definitely top of the charts being talent. India is the youngest country in the world, and we have a huge talent pool, which is fully digitally capable and skilled with the IT skill set, and a lot of engineers passing out every year. A lot of talent pool which has managerial capabilities as well. So talent definitely becomes number one. The environment currently in the country, secondly, is very, very conducive today and very supportive. The government is doing a lot in this space, especially in terms of structural reforms, liberalization of policies. There is a huge focus on making, on the ease of doing business and streamlining processes, huge focus on service exports to really hit that $5 trillion economy mark. So the government is doing a lot in this space to really bring in more foreign capital into the country, and that indeed is creating a very conducive atmosphere today in the country for a large number of MNCs to be able to enter into India. The third, I would say, is really infrastructure. India has space, and India has the potential to expand. You know of the Mumbai, the Bangalores, Pune, and Gurgaon, but there are a large number of other emerging centers which are actually becoming these GCC hubs, as you can see on the slide. And I think the other thing that is really playing out in favor is the entire geopolitical situation, where we are seeing a lot of work coming into India, and global conglomerates are really rethinking their de-risking strategies, trying to reduce the dependency on a single geography. And that is where India is really benefiting with the +1 approach. What I want to leave you with lastly is basically the entire ecosystem effect, which is very, very unique to India, and I must highlight. Just think about this. There are service providers, tech product companies, GCCs, startups, and a very vibrant community of venture capital firms who are really all operating out of these key centers, which are also GCC hubs today. So India is really becoming this melting pot where some of these constituent elements are wonderfully coming together and really maturing further this GCC model and taking it to the next level. At Deutsche Bank, we have had our own remarkable journey in terms of setting up and scaling our global capability center and sort of really riding the India wave with respect to GCCs. We have, I know for a fact that there are a lot of attendees in this particular webinar today who may be at various different stages of their own GCC journey and GCC strategy. Deutsche leads the Center of Excellence as well as our Global Innovation Center out of India. So we really understand your current requirements and your future ambitions. Accordingly, Deutsche is, very well positioned to offer to you large propositional value when it comes to best serving your GCC ambitions. And we've done this time and over, with a lot of global MNCs and partnered with them in their GCC journeys. And this gives me a great segue into our next segment, which basically is all about our journey of setting up and how we established our Global Capability Center and really giving you that recipe to get it right. So with that, I hand it over to Khurshid, and Khurshid, if you can just take us through, please. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My apologies. I'm traveling, so I can't be using the video. It's a bit of a network challenge. I'm actually on holiday, but I'd just like to pick up from what was said earlier, right, and take you a little bit through the journey that Deutsche Bank has had. You've heard all the good things, and it's only natural that there are some things which we think we could do better, right? So when we started this journey about 10, 12 years back, it I will admit it was a struggle, right? And things have improved since then, right? At that point in time, there were some regulations which made it difficult to kind of do business. It was complex in terms of taxation, etc. But it has improved considerably, right? And today I'm glad that we stuck it out. And if I would say one thing that's worked is a focused kind of an approach wherein you build it segment by segment, right? A kind of a big bang expansion doesn't help. So you recognize the areas that define your strategy wherein you'd like to actually kind of move something away from your head office and centralize it into another location, right? It could be India, it could be another location. I mean, that decision is yours, right? But India is an attractive option for certain set of things we do. And over the next 10 minutes, I'll take you through how we did that, right? Now, you there are two elements here which eventually will decide what you want to do. One is the talent skill sets that are available, right? Given such a large country as India, you do have certain pockets where you will get a certain set of specialized skilled people, right? So if I look around and I see a lot of clients, partners, peers, friends, they have a lot of research and development centers, right? It could be for manufacturing companies, it could be for technology, and then you have the next segment where you have a lot of heavy duty processing that takes place. It could be processing of transactions, it could be processing of various accounts payable payments, it could be centralizing a lot of other stuff. We have some more sophisticated people who do treasury operations out of here, where they've centralized their entire treasury in one location, and real-time MIS is fed out, and this enables people to make well-informed decisions. You have people who do risk management out of here, the entire modeling and strategies, and so on, right? I think what what really worked for us was starting off obviously as a cost model, right? And then realizing that a lift and shift does not really work, right? if you have a process which is, first of all, fragmented across the globe, or an activity, when if it's not perfect and you're moving it out here, you're actually just complicating the problem by consolidating it in one place. What worked was reviewing the activity, understanding what's happening, and how you can improve it without any legacy or baggage, right? And then building something out in another location. In our case, it was India, wherein you then have a, a simplified, well-defined activity which is a lot more efficient. And as you go along doing that, you improve it and it becomes a center of excellence, right? Now, there is abundant talent out there, right? I mean, the one good thing is you will get trained talent, right? So you don't need to start from scratch. Almost every industry, every segment, most of your competitors maybe are present out here, and there is enough intellectual knowledge in the system to pick up any process or activity which comes in here, right? Today, Deutsche Bank has reached a level of maturity wherein 25% of our workforce is in India, right? So every fourth person in Deutsche Bank is based out of India, and it's been a long journey, right? Some things that worked for us very importantly are trust, integrity, and transparency, right? And this, just over promising and kind of delivering doesn't help, right? So there is the way the governance is set up is the team you have locally reports into the team for, I'll take an example of Germany, right? So say I have a certain activity where I have a team out here of 5 people, and they have two managers. One is a local manager, which looks after the local supervision, etc. And then you have the functional manager who's based out of Germany or any other location where, and this becomes like an integral part of that colleague's team in Germany. It's just that the person's located in a different place, not in Germany. So the same governance that you would have had if this person was in Germany around performance assessment, around compensation, around promotion is followed out here, because that brings in a strong level of ownership, right? And it's not us versus them, it's all one team. It took us some time to get this model right, but I do believe this is a model which works fantastically and today allows us to scale up seamlessly, right? Another incident which built a lot of trust for us was India was shut for 2 years in COVID, and it's amazing how everyone just stepped up on their own, right? We were all distant, we were in our own homes, we set up small offices out there, but I'm very proud to say we did not miss anything, right? We delivered. In fact, we hired 5,000 people in COVID, and when people came back to office, some of them had never met each other. So the idea of this is not to sell you India or Deutsche Bank. It's to tell you a story of something that works, right? It's nice to have these slides with these numbers, but here's a real story which will tell you how it works, why it works, right? So today, a good 50 to 60% of our technology setup, 50 to 60% of operations, 50% of finance, um, your risk management, your front office functions like corporate banking, investment banking, private banking are all done out of India, right? And I think we obviously do have challenges which are like attrition, etc., but they're no different from anybody else in the market, right? So I think I'm going to pause here because I can talk a lot about this, but I wanted to give you a flavor and an impression which then maybe hopefully leads to a more active Q&A session. So I'll now hand it back to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kushet and Pooja, for these really interesting insights and for this intriguing case study. And I would now like to hand over to my colleague Vivek, who will help us understand the newly enacted Indian data protection law. Over to you, Vivek.
Thank you, Maya. I hope I'm audible to you.
You are.
Perfect. Right. So yes, as introduced by my colleague Maya here, I'm here to talk about the India's Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which marks a significant milestone in our country's technology regulatory framework. The said act basically came into force on the 11th of August. If I may just share my screen, my presentation.
It was visible just now. Yes.
Okay. How about
now?
now?
It's gone again. Try once more.
Yes, please.
Yes.
I hope it's visible.
Perfect.
Perfect. Yes. Right. Perfect. So the problem statement essentially was India did not have a codified legislation, a fully codified legislation, which protects the individual's rights in terms of their personal data when it is shared online. So as users, basically, they had no grievance redressal mechanism that was fully codified that protects their privacy online wherever they leave digital footprints. That was a problem statement. The solution was the Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 23, which is a completely codified law that came into force now, which is applicable throughout the territory. And it's indeed my pleasure to speak on the Act and its impact on individuals in the personal capacity, as well as how it is going to transform the operations of the business. And to start off with, the Act seeks to establish a higher level of accountability and responsibility for every entity that deals with personal data of individuals in the course of their business. Now, to define what personal data constitutes, personal data is any data about a living individual, essentially, who is identifiable by or in relation to such data. It could include phone numbers, email addresses, Aadhaar numbers, other KYC details, which can ultimately enable somebody to trace back to that living individual. That's what constitutes personal data. Now, the Act emphasizes on the internal policies and the best practices that should be undertaken by each business by processing such data. Now, moving on to the applicability of the Act, and who does this Act apply to from a listener standpoint, right? So it applies to all businesses that collects, stores, or uses personal data of individuals for the purpose of providing services within India in digital form. It's very interesting to note that the Indian Act only covers data that is digitized. So by way of an example, if somebody hands over a phone number of an individual in a written file or in a written format by way of a chit, it has to be subsequently digitized for it to fall under the purview of the personal data under this particular Act. And again, it also applies to processing of personal data outside of India. By way of an example, a European Economic Area, a citizen from Europe, is coming to India and signing up for certain services that has to be fulfilled within the Indian territory. Naturally, as far as the person is in India, in Indian geography jurisdiction, and if a service provider is providing them with the services, they will be bound by the Indian law on the applicability aspect. Now we move on to circumstances where the Act does not apply. So certain use cases has been excluded from the purview of the said Act. So now going to the exempted undertakings / purpose. The central government, by way of a notification, may exempt. To elaborate further on that, we have visibility on the Act that has come into place. The procedural aspects, that is the rules, are yet to be notified, and we expect them to be notified by the end of this month. Now, going by what we know so far, there are certain government agencies that will be exempted by the central government, meaning that those agencies can collect and process your data without any sort of consent requirements that you will be looking at in the subsequent slides, or rather without sort of ensuring that the compliance requirements are met, which we will discuss in the subsequent slides. And moving forward, courts and judicial bodies and quasi-judicial bodies are also exempted from the purview of the Act. And any agencies, state agencies, processing your personal data in digital format to enforce any legal right or a claim is also exempt. Right. And another example would be if the services are provided at a different jurisdiction. Say, for example, it is provided in Europe. Again, the local laws there will be applicable. Now, moving on to certain categories of data that does not, qualify or rather does not fall into the purview of the particular act. One would be any data in non-digitized format. It's interesting to note that anything in the hard copy format does not, sort of find its place or rather is not protected by this legislation, unlike many other legislations across the world, again, which we will be taking an example and a use case and discussing it in detail by way of an example, the EU GDPR. There, the hard copy files, while it is actually recognized and falls under the purview, under our Indian Act, all that is sort of falling under the Act is basically data in digitized form. Right? And domestic processing, say for example, a party collecting data for the purpose of sending them a birthday invite or a dinner invite, basically in small numbers, as far as the reason is not commercial in nature, is also exempt. And moving forward, now let's dive into the key concepts. Basically, the idea is to familiarize all our the participants basically with the basic concepts within the particular law. Now, personal data is something that we have discussed, and one key element is that while the predecessors of this particular law, the sensitive SDPI, sensitive data and personal, the Act basically, which is pursuant to the IT Act 2000, basically the older Act, had clear-cut bifurcations between sensitive personal data and critical personal data. So is the case with the European GDPR as well. However, personal data is one single definition in India, which can also include personally identifiable information, personal health information, and normal categories of personal data, which is in digital form, generally not available in the public. With this, we move on to what processing constitutes, right? What amounts to processing of a data. So it's nothing but a wholly or a partially automated operation or a series of operations conducted on the personal data by way of an example, downloading the data in this particular format, making some value addition on the said data, and then making available a service or fulfilling a process amounts to processing of personal data. Right? So it typically involves collection of personal data, recording of data in a different format, organizing such data in a given order, and storing it basically on a server, right? And sort of changing the format to make it get adapted to a certain use case or a requirement. Utilization, indexing of data amounts to processing, right? And further sharing and disclosure with the third party also amounts to processing. Now, the key concepts, moving on to the key concepts. The Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023 has 3 different categories basically of target, sort of individuals or users essentially. To begin with, a data principal is a person to whom the data relates to. So if I am in the capacity of an individual sharing my data with a third party, that makes me a data principal. So as long as I'm providing something to avail services within the territory of India, that makes me a data principal. Now moving on to a data fiduciary, again, as the name suggests, it denotes an element of trust over there. So fiduciary is nobody but the party who determines why a set of data has to be processed. Me as a principal will make available the data to a data fiduciary for the purpose of processing of my data. Right? Now, moving on to the definition of data processor. A data processor is a party who processes the data on behalf of a data fiduciary, more of a subcontractor scenario. Now, we quickly move on to the key obligations in case you are the fiduciary of a data, or rather you sort of your business determines why certain data has to be collected. Quickly going through the concepts, the law specifically states that the processing can only be for lawful purposes. You explain it after letting the user, rather the data principal, know what the purpose is, why is it required, what the purposes are, what are the rights available to them, the grievance redressal mechanism, and obtain consent most importantly, which is free, specific, unconditional, and unambiguous, and of course informed. And again, it also calls for an accessibility requirements for the policies, or rather the consent related aspects, to be published in 22 different Indian languages. And again, the data principals should have the right to manage and review their consent. And burden of proof, basically, that a notice has to be obtained is always on the party who collects the data, right? And record retention has to be accurate in nature. And most importantly, if you're collecting data of individuals who are aged under 18 years of age, that is children, the parental consent is obtained, and it has to be ensured that it is processed without sort of causing any harm to the child, essentially, or there is no behavioral monitoring or targeted advertising, basically, against aimed at children is something that is specified here. Of course, data-driven citizen policy is something that has to be had in place. Now, the Act also interestingly defines a concept known as a significant data fiduciary, who are bigger in size, which will be determined based on the rules that are notified by the government, based on the volume of data processed, and basically potential impact on integrity of India public order and risk to electoral democracy, right? Now, they have a few requirements that we are awaiting, extra set of compliance requirements that we are awaiting once the rules are notified. With this, quickly moving to the concept of a data processor. A processor processes the data on behalf of a fiduciary, more of a subcontractor aspect. And though their degree of responsibility is less in nature, however, the contractual relation has to be very strong with the data fiduciary. And they process the data, and they sort of fulfill the obligation of a subcontractor. Now, quickly going through their roles and responsibilities here. It should be based on a contractual obligation. There should be an element of confidentiality. There should be a breach reporting mechanism. Right? It should always be under a valid contract. Now, moving forward, discussing the rights available to a citizen, or rather an individual who provides the data for the purpose of processing. Again, the consent should be required. The consent can be revocable at any point in time. They should be given the right to access their own data. They should be given the right to correct and delete their own personal data, and should have a grievance redressal mechanism, and have the right to sort of nominate a party who will actually sort of step into their shoes in case of their death or permanent disability, right? And exercise their rights. And on cross-border data transfer, moving on. So cross-border data transfer is nothing but your rights to actually collect data in India as a business and sort of store it in a server outside of India. So though there is no express prohibition on this, we sort of await inputs on the same, basically, once the rules are notified. As of now, except for those particular sectors that are notified under other laws that cannot be transferred, there is no express prohibition for transfer of data outside of India. So knowing the key authorities under the Act. So if you have a reasonable ground to believe that your rights have been compromised, right, you approach the Digital Data Protection Board that will be formed pursuant to the Act. And the first point of escalation is the Telecom Disputes and Settlement Appellate Tribunal. Then goes to the appeal to the Supreme Court of India, which is the ultimate deciding authority. Now, moving on to the penalty in terms of non-compliance. So the penalties can extend up to 250 crores here in case you as a business fail to take necessary prevention mechanism and adopt policies and procedures in place. It is also interesting to note that if a user misrepresents themselves, they can be penalized to the tune of 10,000 INR, basically, up to 10,000 INR and whatever the board deems fit. And other non-compliance is basically in the event that the affected data principals are not notified and the board is not notified in case there is a breach, 200 can extend up to 200 crore of INR. And quickly moving forward, basically the most awaited section, essentially the question that is asked is how different is this Act from GDPR, and why should I need a separate compliance program for the same? We quickly look at the similarities now. Anonymized data is excluded in both. As long as the data is anonymized, it can be processed and the sections will not come into it. And there are exemptions in both the legislations, but consent is not required. Right? And consent basically is a key requirement in both the legislations. Both require proof that the consent has been obtained. The DPO has to be obtained in certain cases. Now we quickly go through the differences basically. One, the DPDPA sort of specifically states that there should be sort of publication of policies in 22 languages for accessibility, where GDPR is different. Categorization of data is a generic one in DPDPA, where GDPR has different categories. Offline data is excluded in DPDPA, and offline data part of a filing system is included in the GDPR, right? And mostly the breach notification essentially is submitted to us into the GDPR, and there is no timeline prescribed under the said act, the Indian Act. So I'm just touching upon the most important one. So the next steps to be taken is basically by the businesses dealing with data is conduct training sessions, understand the law, familiarize yourselves, and for the data collected prior to enactment, send them a privacy notice, and have an internal policy in place, right? And monitor compliance on an ongoing basis and have the solutions customized to you from a need-based perspective. That brings me to the end of the session, and happy to take questions. Over to you, Maya.
Thanks, Vivek. And I would request all of our speakers to switch on their cameras if possible. I know Mr. Khurshid can't switch it on, but Pooja, thank you so much. And we'll begin with the Q&A session. We have ample of time. We have already received some questions in advance with the registration process, but still feel free if you have any questions to just post them in the question panel so that our experts can answer them live here. So let me start with Vivek. We have received a question for you, and the question is, what do we do as a company with personal data that already resides in our database prior to the law coming into force? Would you answer that one for us?
Thanks for the question, Maya. So most companies would have a large chunk of data already available in their databases as on notification of the act. Now, the companies are immediately required to send out a mailer to all such data principals to whom such data relate to and get a consent basically, and basically a comprehensive notice basically, and obtain their consent as a first step. Let them know that, give them a heads up that it's already present and get a consent. I hope that answers the question.
Yep, that's very insightful. Perfect. So then I have another question, not for you, Vivek, now, but for Deutsche Bank to keep it a little, like a ping pong here. So from Deutsche Bank's own experience of scaling your shared service center to more than 20,000 people, could you maybe shed some light on, navigating the challenge of talent acquisition for different functions?
Khurshid, you want to take that? I think
Either Pooja or Khurshid. He might
Khurshid,
be.
you're on mute, I think.
Okay, I can't see him right now. Maybe his internet connection dropped. Pooja, would you be able to maybe make a start on that, and maybe Khurshid will come back and give his inputs as well?
Yeah, sure. I think, in terms of one of our key requirements, as Khurshid also mentioned, was in terms of getting the right kind of talent. We have, I think in Khurshid's session, we were also kind of had a slide on the overall kinds of functions that really you need to take care of. There are finance functions, there are back office functions, we are moving into more innovation and R&D and engineering, really bringing in some of the technical expertise with it, even related to taxation and some of the other aspects. So it is very important to then really find the right pockets in the country and the right set of locations. For example, say a Bangalore, you would have a large set of folks passing out from different colleges and bringing in that technical expertise, whether it's engineering or R&D, and many such similar locations. You need to have the right kind of partner to bring in talent into the organization. I think we have
Sorry.
Khurshid as well. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I kind of had to rejoin and then I couldn't talk because I wasn't a panelist. Sorry for that.
No
Sorry.
problem.
So could you repeat the question, Evie, please?
Yes, let me repeat. Yes, I repeat the question. So from Deutsche Bank's own experience of scaling your shared service center to more than 20,000 people, could you maybe shed some light on navigating the challenge of talent acquisition for different functions? That was the question. Pooja has already given us a few insights on that. Maybe you would like to.
All right. No, thank you for that. Apologies again for the delay in coming on. So it depends what kind of activity you're looking for, right? In terms of talent, and broadly, I'd break it up into two parts. One is ready talent, which is already trained talent, talent you kind of attract from other organizations doing similar roles, and the second type of talent is the talent you train, right? So the first part is kind of relatively easier to get, ready to go, mostly 90%, and yeah, and these are available for you at a price, right? So you're paying a price, and typically when you attract talent, there's a hike of anywhere between 20 to 30% in comp, and that's market norm. It's like knowledge everyone has. The second one is grad hires. So we actively go to top institutes such as the management and technology institutes, the engineering institutes like the IITs and the IIMs, and we hire grads and kind of train them up. The challenges you typically see is that you are chasing the same set of talent pool, and accepted attrition is anywhere between 15 to 20%. So when you're doing your planning, you need to bring that in. More than talent management, I think talent retention is very important. A lot of people join for the culture of the organization, the ability to be flexible, a career path, doing things in different parts of the organization rather than just doing the same thing again and again. And we found that something like that makes them stick, in addition to things you do on the culture side, like diversity, corporate social responsibility, employee engagement. So you need to make the culture an inclusive one where people really want to come into work. And which is also why in some locations our attrition kind of statistics are less than 5%. So it's a blend of both. I hope that answers your question.
I think it did. Thank you so much. And it's actually also just, very interesting and very good advice for, company representatives who are listening to us right now. Thank you. I'll direct the next question to Deutsche Bank as well, because that one also came along with the talent acquisition question. And the question is, how was the Deutsche Bank management basically convinced of setting up a capability center here? Is that something you could maybe, it's also part of advice, I guess, maybe give us some. Oh,
No, so let me take that as well. I think if you remember what I said when we started off, right? It's a journey. So it has to be step by step. Right? You can't go in for a big bang plan, say I want to grow 20,000 people. You have to build it. You have to build it block by block. You start with small success stories, you move on to the next ones, and then you have the same businesses giving you more and more stuff to do. And in some locations today, we've got more people in India than we've got in Germany or the US, right? So it's a journey. You a lot of it is also, to be honest, taking away roles from another country, right? And you're bringing it over here. So if you look at it from that point of view, there's a lot of internal marketing which needs to be done, and a very strong business case which really needs to make it compelling. And of course, the trust and transparency is paramount out here.
thank you so much. Okay. Again, very interesting advice. I'll do a little switch again to, spice things up again, basically, in terms of topics. Vivek, may I ask you another question? So if I am processing that data of a European resident for providing them services in India, could you maybe explain what law applies to me?
Right. So the Digital Personal Data Protection Act extends to Indian territory as long as the services are provided in India. So if the European citizen comes to India and he's trying to avail services in India, and if such services are provided in India, the applicable law would be the DPDP. Hope that addresses the question.
Okay, short and concise, very good, thank you. Okay, there was one more question that I have received in advance. That one is again directed to Deutsche Bank. How are GCCs navigating the shift from cost-effective delivery to innovation and customer-focused product management? And maybe you could give us an example as well. I guess Deutsche Bank is also an example as such.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll take that one. So yeah, we
Sure,
are
please.
seeing, as I mentioned, typically these organizations were earlier in the past 2 decades set up as really sources of cost arbitrage, and today, they have evolved and come a long way in terms of becoming actually these centers for innovation. There are knowledge hubs, there are centers of excellence where basically a lot of these functional activities for large global corporates, wanting to bring a more centralized and a more standardized approach to customer service, to delivery, to a lot of these non-core functions, which otherwise would probably take away from the core business proposition that they have. So the idea is then to really keep all these non-core functions, which are yet very, very important for the running and sustainability of the business, and hand it over to an expert team or an expert set of individuals who are specifically hired and trained for these functions. So accordingly, we for Deutsche as well have kind of established a center of excellence. We have grown really from a very small organization to close to 20,000 plus people, and as we started off in a certain location and now have multiple geographical bases within country. There's Pune, there's Bangalore, and we have recently also opened something in Jaipur. So there are these evaluations which need to be done in terms of how we really segregate some of these responsibilities across these locations, leverage what really that location has to offer in terms of the infrastructure as well as the talent pool available in that particular location. And we have also kind of set up our Global Innovation Capability Center in India now, where we are trying to really come up with some of the really breakthrough, cutting edge financial service technologies and solutioning that is happening out of these centers. So, payments space and financial sector has really evolved over time, and India has really been one of the leading beacon bearers in terms of leapfrogging some of the digital stuff that has happened in the country, and rightly so. The talent is also very well aligned in terms of getting that product out to the market and getting that innovation in place. So yeah, I think Deutsche, from our standpoint, is a great example in terms of how we ourselves have evolved from just plain vanilla back office operations to really bringing that entire value to a large organization like Deutsche Bank, and bringing in that scale and efficiency across global operations for all of our clients.
Thank you so much for answering that one. And for your valuable insights as always, Pooja. I have one last question, unless we get some more pressing questions in as well. Now I don't know whether Mr. Khurshid has joined back in. I think his internet connection is a little unstable. Let's just see whether Pooja you would like to answer that one. Otherwise, we can also keep it for some other time. So the question would be, what is the importance of corporate governance when planning a GCC for an organization? And how can the integration with parent or headquarter objectives really be achieved when the GCCs are based in an offshore location, like, for example, India?
No, I think Khurshid would have been a great choice to answer this question, given he deals with it on a day-to-day basis at a chief operating officer level, and really getting all the top-down stuff. But if I really have to attempt this, corporate governance is is very significant when it comes to establishing something like this. Because think of it locationally, right? You are trying to create a complete separate arm of specialized capabilities, which may not really be core to your business proposition, but you have to you are trying to find the most cost effective and the most attractive option to set up this center. But you also want this particular entity to be really aligned with your core values, your vision, and your value proposition, and to be able to really bring all of the employees under a single umbrella and under single policies. It's very easy for these entities, and we've seen different entities in various different stages for different companies that we have been able to interact with over time. It all depends on the kind of stage and maturity that you are in, and the kind of entity that really has established itself, because we also see a lot of these entities going more and more autonomous and not really remaining captive to the to their own organization or their own to the parents and headquarters requirements. So it's differently, there's no right model as such, I'd say, but it's something which you need to figure out best to what is it that you want the entity to achieve in terms of the objectives, align it very well with your HQ strategy and your overall the policies that govern your organization and the value and mission statement, and then try and bring everything together under a very transparent set of alignment of objectives, giving enough autonomy to the local entity to be able to handle its day-to-day functions, while also having certain level of oversight and alignment with parent objectives. So I think that would be my answer.
Thank you so much, Pooja. And thank you so much to all of you. I will now come to the closing remarks because we're already, approaching our time limit, basically. Of course, any other questions, by the audience, you can reach out to us at any time. Those will be answered as well, of course. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this webinar today. And of course, we hope you found it informative and engaging. And we do understand that your time is valuable, and we really appreciate that you chose to spend it with us today. If you have any further questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to either the MIIM program or our speakers, as I just said. And of course, we would be happy to continue the conversation and provide any additional information you may need. One small announcement right here: if you happen to be interested in the green hydrogen sector, we would just like to take this opportunity to invite you to our upcoming webinar, Powering Tomorrow with Green Hydrogen, India's Sunrise Sector, on 26th of October, which will entail contributions from really high-profile speakers, including His Excellency Pavataneni Harish, the Ambassador of India to Germany. And of course, you find all the details on LinkedIn, or if you just reach out to us. And last but not least, I would like to once more thank all our speakers, Mr. Dordi, Ms. Sundar Pooja, and Mr. Balakrishnan Vivek, as well as the Embassy of India and Röden Partner for the support. Thank you so much, dear attendees, for your patient listening, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and goodbye. Auf Wiedersehen to the German audience. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.